my belief from the beginning is that the 2 or 3 most important that must be done properly is the Attorney General with the White House counsel. And let's throw FBI in there. What I would call that.
So will he fire Wray?
101 day one. I think the FBI ought to be taken apart, shut down as a federal agency. The other is what I call the economic, because the firestorm that's going to come with the debt ceiling and the budget and all that. You have to have Treasury, you have to have NEC, and all the Treasury kind of guys kind of lined up. That has to be one. And then the third is the mass deportations.
All right, guys, I told you earlier in the week, if you were shocked by Pete Hegseth, buckle up, baby. You ain't seen nothing yet. And President Trump has continued to deliver. Steve Bannon, Dr. Peter McCullough are here. And I'm telling you, you are going to want to see the whole thing through. All right, before I get to it, I know everyone keeps getting shocked, I tell you, by all these announcements. But the one thing you should never do is be shocked when the power goes out. That's why I have a Patriot power generator in my house, because I don't want to be shocked. I actually want power. And the Patriot Power Generator 2000X is powered by a solar panel that comes free with it, right? No running to the gas station, no hoping that it takes credit cards, no hoping that it's open. You have a free gas card. It's called a solar panel in the sun, and it powers the most powerful things in your house: refrigerators, tablets, computers, medical devices. It's portable. You can bring it in your house. So you got no fumes, no noise. You can bring it over to a friend's house, a family member's house, and be the hero, or you can keep it selfishly in your own house. I have one because I know that if I need one somewhere, I can bring it. I can do it in my own house. If we're having some kind of outdoor thing, I can power all that stuff too. It's pretty cool, right? Do not be caught flat-footed in the time of emergency. Get a Patriot Power Generator 2000X and the free solar panel that comes with it. Go to 4patriots.com/Spicer. The numeral 4patriots.com/Spicer to get yours. You will not regret it. And do not wait to say, I wish I had done this. Do it right now. Click on it. All right. Listen, names galore keep coming out. This is incredible. I don't know why people keep saying, I'm shocked. I didn't see that coming. I told you. We called J.D. Vance. We called the election. We told you what was going to happen with all of this. I feel like at some point I can't help people who watch CNN. That's why they're firing everyone over there. In all seriousness, there's rumors about massive firings going to take place because they're cutting costs because ratings are way down. I told you about MSNBC. Stephanie Ruhle, 67% down. Talk about failing fast. I mean, that's amazing. And Comcast is talking about spinning it off. Yeah, no kidding. All right, so I got so much to get into with Steve Bannon. I want to know who needs to get fired, what he thinks about the picks, what reforms need to get in, what he's telling President Trump. Now, here's the thing. He has a pipeline to Trump. He's talking to him. So if you want to know what's going on, here's the guest. And it's not some 5-minute interview. You will get all the goods. And then I'm going to talk to Peter McCullough and get some updates on the Maha movement at the end. So Bannon's going to go for a while, tell us everything he needs to know. Then Peter McCullough. Sit back, get yourself an adult beverage, because this is going to be one heck of a ride. I think I covered all the ground with Bannon. I am so excited about this conversation with Steve because I asked him everything that I had been writing down for days in advance of this. Like, I want to get his take on this, this, and this. Plus, what was it like in prison? Does he have retribution? Does he want to go after these people in the January 6th commission? I would. So I want to know what his take was on this. All right. Let me bring in Steve Bannon. But before I do that, I just want to tell you, I mean, we're bringing in Peter McCullough in a little, Dr. Peter McCullough. But there's one of the things that I've learned and want to talk to him about this wellness stuff. I took a probiotic. I always thought that I was being healthy. I was like, oh, cool, I'll take a probiotic. I meet Tina Anderson from Just Thrive. She says, hey, I hate to tell you this. I get it. You're trying. It's like, the mom. I know you're trying. But she was like, unfortunately, most probiotics don't make it through the stomach to the intestine. They don't 99% of them. And here's the thing, 70% of Americans have gut issues. Gut issues affect everything, right? If you don't have a healthy gut, that's bad sleep, bad skin, it affects your mood. I mean, so many things go into or come out of having a healthy gut. So why would I be taking a probiotic if it didn't help? And then Tina was like, guess what? We make these Just Thrive probiotics. They also make a great product called Just Calm, which maybe the Democrats I should give that as Christmas gift to Democrats. I just don't have any Democrats to give them to, but the probiotic I love. These are the pills, and they're 100% spore based. These things get through the stomach to where they're supposed to go and have the effect, right? She actually makes gummy ones, and I asked her, I said, are the gummies do I defeat the? She's like, no, it has all the same stuff. So the code works for the gummies too. If that's your thing, it's my thing. So I've taken both. I bring the travel ones when I travel with the pills, and I take the gummies at home. But for a limited time, you can try either of the Just Thrive products, the Just Calm or the probiotic, or actually just bottle it all up, get it at checkout. Save 20% on your first time order. Go to justthrivehealth.com. Use promo code Spicer. Justthrivehealth.com. Use promo code Spicer. All right, let me bring in Mr. Stephen K. Bannon. Hey, Steve, welcome back to the show. Always good to see you.
Hey, Sean, how you doing, man? Haven't been on since we did the Front Row Joes, which is a film I absolutely love.
I'm telling you, and when President Trump, by the way, said in Michigan, right on election night eve, this is my last rally, I thought to myself, well, folks, if you missed a Trump rally, this is the only way you can see one now is to go to frontrowjoes.movie. So I told him the other day, I said, it's been great. And as a side note, just so you know, and you and I texted on this, Amazon is declining to let us air this. The first time I've told anybody but you this, because they're saying that it doesn't meet their content standard. And by the way, here's the best part. There is no appealing the decision. And so we can't find out why. It's just, so it's just, and it's funny. I told people when we put it up on Salem, the guys at Salem said, Sean, we're going to want to make DVDs available. I said, does anyone want DVDs? And they said, trust me.
Sean, here's my recommendation on air. I would call the political director of Jeff Bezos, his political operation, and say, hey, I want to talk to Bezos directly. I think his attitude today would be a little different than
yeah. Hey, suddenly,
it may be profiled, special, yeah. Amazon special.
Yeah. I don't know. It's like, one of those Facebook things where I don't know how the algorithm caught that. That was a mistake. Yeah. So yeah, I think might want to reach out to Amazon. I'll let them know. All right, so let me just, overall, let's start with this. What do you think about the picks that President Trump has made so far?
I think it shows that he's going to have a combination of both steady eddies and some disruptive. I think you got to look at, to me, directionally, where you have the areas he really wants to focus on, things that need some restructuring are things like the intelligence community with Tulsi Gabbard, obviously DOJ with Matt Gaetz and the other people he'll announce. I think the DAG, as you remember, the DAG, the criminal division, OLC.
Deputy Attorney General for everybody who's not.
Yeah, Deputy Attorney General.
I know you're a swamp guy. So.
Hey, I'm just giving you inside baseball. So the Deputy Attorney General actually runs the building. And folks, just so you should know, I think Sean would agree that the most complicated job in all of D.C., with many complicated jobs, is the Attorney General. Everything, whether it's Defense Department, State Department, DHS, the Treasury, everything goes across the Attorney General's desk. Everything. And
so let me paint this picture though. We can talk about the other picks in a second, right? And so far, I don't see an argument against the other picks. I know people are shocked and surprised, but here's the thing. I think that Matt Gaetz scares the crap out of not just Democrats, but some Republicans, especially in the Senate. Some.
The timing of Wednesday, the other day, was, Thune stepped up and said, okay, I'm open. We're going to do the Trump agenda. And, my job is to, and he and Cornyn swore, we may not need the recess. We're not going to do recess because we will stay here every day until they get approved. Okay, bro, suck on this. I'm going to give you Pete Hegseth. Matt Gaetz, and I'll throw in a Tulsi Gabbard on top of it. So have at it.
But okay, so among the three, I got to say this. Here's the thing. Someone said to me, multiple people said, Pete Hegseth, is he really qualified? I go, well, so he deployed 3 times. He ran a VSO, a veteran service organization called Concerned Veterans for America. He was an officer, what part of, and he's written multiple books on the military. He went to Harvard. So I'm sorry, which qualification?
Went to Princeton.
I'm sorry.
I think he has an advanced degree from Harvard, but we call him a Princeton guy.
Oh, okay. See, I wouldn't know. But I guess the thing that's so funny is I said, so explain to me what the qualification you're looking for, because he served, he deployed, he fought, he led an organization. he's highly intelligent, clearly, in terms of where he went to school, right? And they were like, well, I mean, I go, so what you're saying is, let's just be clear. He didn't come from like the establishment, right? He didn't come from Boeing or General Dynamics, or he wasn't a retired four-star.
Look, here's, I think, look, you've been in the building. Here's what I think the question is. And we will put people around him like that. He'll be leadership. It is the most complicated industrial concern in the world. The complexity of the issues, the weapons procurement, the material command. I mean, I was a special assistant to the chief of naval operations back in 81 to 83. And my job was to sit in those decision meetings and be the scribe and kind of vet the presentations. It was so mind-numbingly complex. It's just, and it's metastasized since then. I think the hit on Pete is going to be, well, first of all, the swamp doesn't want him because he is a breath of fresh air. And he's like, right. I love putting up junior officers into those positions above the flags, particularly when they have leadership. You have to put a team around him, his deputy, other people like that, because it's the biggest. And the budget's $1 trillion. And as you know, Sean, how complex, and particularly at the high level where you got to organize and make sure, we fight as one unit, all the weapons procurement. And Pete's been very big spokesman on this, how he doesn't think that China's well ahead of us in technology. So this is where I see actually Elon Musk and people like Vivek. I know they're going to redo the government. I see them being a big help to Pete Hegseth. And I think the team the president puts around him is going to be critical. And I think it'll be critical for his confirmation. I think he will get confirmed, subject to his financial and personal stuff all being sorted out. But I think it'll get confirmed. But I think you have to give some cover to people to say, hey, we're going to put guys in, because he's never run a big organization. I honestly believe that what happened on Wednesday, as you know, we fought the Thune thing. I think the Thune situation cruised through, and that Scott, who I don't think really had a shot, was out, because I thought the Hegseth nomination, I think, got a lot of those guys over there saying, hey, I gotta have some air cover here. Yeah.
Well, the thing that's interesting, you mentioned China. I'm like, here's the problem, and I've been trying to explain this to people. When the priority in the building, as we say, the DoD, is like, let's make sure we have DEI training, as opposed to warfighter readiness. Let's make sure we can take on the enemy and defeat them and protect the country. That's the priority, not whether or not, we've done training about equity and inclusion.
Hang on. We've had two problems. That's one, as it got woke, but there's a more fundamental systemic problem. Remember, Obama in 2009, his big thing was pivot to Asia. We come, and his whole pivot to Asia was forward deploying one Marine Combat Brigade to Darwin, Australia. He couldn't do it because the CENTCOM mentality, I mean, I don't need to tell you this, but the CENTCOM mentality of the building is locked in. Now, even with Trump and even with Biden, our ability to really, which I think we have to do, is to pivot in a multinational and multi-service way, not just the Navy, but to East Asia and to Taiwan and to the South China Sea and to the East China Sea, Indo-Pacific, has been brutal. Let's be honest, we haven't done it because the building's been very reticent to do it. CENTCOM still has a center of gravity in the Pentagon that has been and they're going to look at Pete, and a lot of those guys are going to lick their chops. They're going to go, hey, I got a brave junior officer. He fought in the Middle East. He's attuned to what's happening. And I think Pete will surprise them. But if you want a real pivot to Asia and to take the Chinese Communist Party on and let them know militarily that we can actually defend Taiwan, it's going to be a lift. And you're going to need the entire team. Waltz, and here's what I like about Waltz Rubio. People blowing up their neocons. I said, yeah, they have those tendencies. But in the House and in the Senate, we have the two hardest anti-CCP guys. I mean, Rubio's report he put out on the CCP's 100 top guys and the assets they own is a breathtakingly, brilliant study of putting the CCP on notice. So I think Waltz and Rubio will be there. I think Pete will be there. And I think the big thing you're going to see as we try to get peace in Ukraine, peace in the Middle East, is a true pivot to Asia to actually be able to show the Chinese Communist Party that we are prepared militarily to take on all comers, and not just with the 7th Fleet.
I hate to interrupt this conversation, but Steve looks good too. I wonder if he's doing what I'm doing. But I feel like I'm down, or not feel, I know, because I have to weigh in. I'm down several pounds, because when I saw my buddy Seb Gorka and what he was doing, he told me about this thing, PhD weight loss. And I was like, okay, so what's the deal? I've tried every fad diet. I have. It's just, I can name them: Atkins, Mediterranean, keto, you name it. But they're all fatty. Fat, not fatty, but fatty. And I would lose a few pounds and I gain it back. And he said, trust me, Sean, try the PhD weight loss. And I did. And I love it because you set this thing up where you meet with a coach every week. There's accountability. And I'll tell them about what I did, or, hey, I'm going out to this. And they'll say, okay, here's what you can have when you go. But it's not about like a fad diet. It's not about, you make goals. They're really manageable. And they're trying to teach you how to make changes in your life that are better for you, that change your lifestyle. Does that make sense? And I love it so far. And they give you some starter foods as part of the program that don't cost anything extra. They come as part of it. You get the weekly weigh-ins with a nutritionist that can talk to you about things that you can sub in if you don't like certain things. And I am a picky eater, I'll just be honest. So you can give them a call and see what I'm seeing, which is just a great alternative to fad diets. Call them at 1-864-664-1900, or better yet, go to myphdweightloss.com, myphdweightloss.com, and check them out. All right, back to Steve Bannon. So the funny thing is, I'm not saying anything classified or sharing any secrets when I say this, but you remember there were plenty of times President Trump would come in and say, hey, I want to get us out of Afghanistan. I want things changed up. And they would come in and say, okay, course of action 1 is we do everything the same. Course of action 2 is we add more people. And he would start to blow up and say, what part of change don't you get? And I think with Pete Hegseth, he's got someone that right off the bat is going to go, I got it. And we're going to come back with a solution, as opposed to we're going to dress up the same old thing with just a better PowerPoint slide.
For your audience, understand we have a government that's $6.5 trillion a year, but the contingent liabilities, 37 trillion in debt, contingent liabilities over 100, vast assets, but spending 6-7 trillion a year, massive deficits. But in that, you have about 2.5 million civilians, roughly 2.5 million service employees, so about 5 together. You have 18 million contractors. 9 million of those are just cleaning the bill and things like that. So you have 9 million kind of working contractors. Half of those are executives. So let's say another 4 or 5 million. So 10 million, which makes sense, to run an apparatus that's $7 trillion a year. To do that, you get 4,000 people. 3,000, Sean, as you remember, we can send in a landing team, beachhead team. They can go in. As long as they get a security clearance, they can hit the deck place running. 1,000, the top guys, secretaries, cabinet guys, undersecretaries, have to be Senate confirmed. Now, in the White House, Sean Spicer and Steve Bannon don't need any confirmation. They're part of that 3,000 that just hit the deck plates running. So this is why President Trump, I think, has to get the team together, very organized, to make sure that we can kind of hit this thing running, and it's as much organized as possible. At the same time, put the Senate Republicans on notice. Hey, you're essentially the Human Resources Department. I need these guys right here set up and teed up to go. For folks that watch this show, I think you should be prepared for a firestorm over the next, even before Inauguration Day. You're going to have a firestorm on basically what's going to be the approval of these guys for the confirmation. The advice and consent of the Senate, I think, will be, the TV rights will be worth a lot of money, Sean.
I love that. The TV rights will be worth, yeah. What do you think about, you mentioned Gaetz. He announced him Wednesday as the Attorney General. That's the one where I think they might let some of these other guys go because they think that because they're qualified. Gaetz, I wonder how many Republicans are willing to dig in their heels and say, this is a bridge too far for me. Or do they say, I got to get President Trump this?
I absolutely agree. I think that is why it's a great acid test. First off, if I'm Pete Hegseth, the Tulsi Gabbard, I go, right? Because listen, Gaetz hit over the battlefield as an airburst. It shocked everybody. And I think President Trump is putting on notice of what he intends to do as he confronts the debt ceiling and the massive deficits and the tax, everything economically, the border, the deportation. Stephen Miller and these guys right now, there won't be any stories about Miller being a Nazi for a while because Gaetz gets to the heart of this city. Let me go back to what I said about Attorney General. Here's the reason. Everything in this city is basically about lawyers. It just is. The Constitution is simply a contract. The Constitution is a contract between 13 unequal entities to merge into a merger of equals to kind of form a nation. Everything from there is contractual relationship. The AG, the Attorney General, is the most complicated job, and particularly President Trump, in trying to deconstruct the administrative state, particularly try to take on the deep state. Your obviously intel people are important. Your people at DOD are important. The White House counsel and those people are important. But the people who are going to lead that are really the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General, the DAG. You have to have a team. And I agree with you. I think that this is where a couple of those senators, first off, you're going to lose Murkowski and Collins. So you're at 51. You got to hold the line. And I think this is where Trump says, hey, look, I could have easily fought you. I could have gotten all these guys up, the Sean Spicer and the Bannon. I could have worked them all up. Their audiences would have been I didn't do that, right? You said you were going to back my choices. This is my choice. Give me some advice and then give me your consent.
Give me your consent. So who is there someone like, I think like to me, the border security team, particularly Tom Homan, I think that was like the best signal to me for people who are concerned about immigration and our nation's security. When Tom Homan got that announcement, I said, hey, guess what? Like, I think it sent chills through the cartels. They went, oh, crap, we might need to get into another line of work.
And also with Stephen Milley at the same time. As
Yeah.
you know, Stephen, he has a house style that is a little blunt. To make him the first announced deputy chief of staff for policy and announce he's going to be the connective tissue with Homan. I think what President Trump also did in announcements, you did all the comm strategy for us besides being the spokesman. People don't realize, Sean, I'm sure your audience doesn't. Sean did something that's very unique. I don't really remember anybody else doing it. He was the comms director, which is one of the most complicated jobs in the White House. All communications comes through one guy. And I mean, everything from it's National Pancake Day to we're going to war, right? It's definitely.
God, I love Pancake Day.
And everything in between. But then you're also the press secretary. And the press secretary, every day I'd walk in, Sean being this binder, I'd walk in, there'd be 30 guys. They murder board this guy because you have to. It's so complicated. So I think that is why the announcement of what they did here, I think, was quite strategic. They held off the head of DHS. And in fact, it was kind of confusing at first. Was Homan DHS, borders are whatever. But when they named him and Miller at the same time, you kind of understood, okay, they're hardwiring the White House to these agencies. And then to name Governor Noem the next day as DHS kind of shows you she'll probably do more of the terrorism and the Secret Service and that. This is your team. I also think this is why it was important to announce Bill McGinley, announce the White House counsel. I think what you're seeing is that they're kind of doing verticals. You announce a Walls, right? And then you got Hegseth a couple of days later, right? So you announce these verticals. What's going to happen, either National Security Council to the Pentagon, National Security Council to the Secretary of State, White House counsel to DOJ, and I'm sure NEC and the Domestic Policy Council will be around who Treasury Secretary is, et cetera. So I think it's a very smart information and communication strategy.
Okay. You last time in 2016 were instrumental in key positions. I mean, I think the SECDEF, Secretary of the Navy rather, and Joint Chiefs, other key functions. Who do you really want to fight for right now? What positions are you trying to get to Trump and say, these are the ones that I think are critical to a successful second term?
The ones I fought for to date have been, my belief from the beginning is that the two or three most important that must be done properly is the Attorney General with the White House counsel and the people around him. That DOJ is absolutely important. And let's throw FBI in there. What I would call that.
So will he fire Wray?
100% day one. I mean, they're down to the FBI situation is absolutely critical. So that's important, right? You've got to keep that. I think the other is what I call the economic, because the firestorm that's going to come with the debt ceiling and the budget and all that. You have to have Treasury, you have to have NEC, and all the Treasury kind of guys kind of lined up. That has to be one. And then the third is the mass deportations. That's Homan and Stephen Miller. If you can take care of those three, like Rubio, people say, well, why are you blowing Rubio up? You're America first, and he's a neocon. I said, well, besides the fact he's anti-CCP, to me, that's just not in my bailiwick. Those three power agencies right now, you have to do that correct. If you don't do that correct, President Trump's second term is going to get a little bumpy. So, I know DOD is important and all that. It'll kind of fall into place. But you got to get those three correct.
So did you give him a name? Have you given him a name, or do you want somebody in particular for FBI?
I've given him a name and worked quite hard for the FBI.
Okay. You mentioned the CCP. I believe.
I think, by the way, I think the FBI ought to be taken apart, shut down as a federal agency, go to Congress and undo it, and rebuild a federal law enforcement force if you need it somehow around the U.S. Attorney. First thing I do with the FBI is go over there with the 250 lawyers they have, clean them all out, send them over to DOJ, and then maybe use them after you fire all the U.S. attorney. Which I've recommended, you should fire ask for the letters of resignation of all the U.S. attorneys at 1 minute after noon on the 20th of January, 2025. Ask for those. Take the lawyers from the FBI, put them in justice, and then either keep them or get rid of them. But the FBI, I think, ought to be taken apart.
I want to remind you of something very interesting, and because people missed this when it happened. When Biden came into office in August of that first year, he fired me and everyone else who served on the Service Academy boards. I was on the board of visitors to the U.S. Naval Academy, and he fired everyone. And I sued all these other, it's funny how many other people President Trump supported and nominated who wouldn't join the lawsuit. It was Spicer v. Biden, because a bunch of these people who are so committed to President Trump, they didn't want their name on a lawsuit. So anyway, we sued President Biden. And here is the dirty secret, Steve. My term ended in November. So I was about 2 months out and I knew I wasn't going to be renominated by Biden, but he fired us. And so by the time we went to court, my term was over. And he fought us in court and said that they had absolute authority, regardless of what the law said and what Congress had written, to fire anybody, anytime. Now, here's why this matters. For anybody worth their salt, they realized my term had expired by the time we went to court and by the time we appealed it. The goal was never to actually get all of me and these other folks back on the boards. It was to make them affirmatively argue in a court that they had the authority to do this. Now, guess what? President Trump can use the Biden arguments that were successful in court to say, you guys laid out the precedent.
You ought to say this on air. You better I'll connect you to Bill McGinley. You got to get to McGinley, right?
I know, but isn't this beautiful? We knew what we were doing, and nobody in the media, they kept saying, you lost the case. And I went, you dummies have no idea what we're doing, because we just played you all. We made you go to court and fight to say we had the authority. And I think that they forgot. So when President Trump comes in right now, all he has to do is say, Joe Biden gave us the precedent. And the courts have affirmed that he has everything he needs to do. And I was laughing all the way to his second term, because I was going, you guys just screwed up so royally. Well, got me off a board for 60 days.
Because they never thought Trump would be back. And they understood that a standard stock Republican would never do that. They would never, oh gosh.
Yeah. And by the way, just as I mentioned, we might want to remember who those people were that refused to put their name on the lawsuit, because they were so worried about etiquette and norms. I said, screw it, let's fight for principle. And guess what? And now we win.
I was so proud when you did that, and quite frankly, a little disappointed in people that President Trump, because remember, even every nomination he did, everything he did was a struggle everywhere. So it was a struggle because the apparatus, the established order, just fought him on everything. So look, good on you.
I'll follow up with McKinley. So let me ask you this: when we were getting ready in 2016, you and I whiteboarded some.
By the way, you see, Sean threw out a leading thing just for the audience. This is how smart Sean is in communications. He threw out a thing. But Steve, I know you focus on SECDEF. You did such a great job, Secretary of the Navy. Do you want to be Secretary of the Navy, Sean? Should I start working that one? I think you'd be a great secretary.
Anyway, so let's get on.
No, I think you'd be a great secretary. No, I know Reince has already pitched me, because Reince is like an ensign or something now, right? So Commander.
Yeah, I think at some point you need to know how many ships we have before you become SecNav. So,
Commander, I'm gonna say this on air. I absolutely 1,000% support
Yeah.
you being Secretary of the Navy, and I will get working on that right now. And I've got a pretty good track record so
My
far.
wife is going to appreciate that. I thank you for that. Anyway, let me just, you and I whiteboarded a bunch of reforms. I don't want to get into the names for Press Secretary of Comms. I'll leave that aside. He announced Taylor Budowich as the Deputy Chief for Communications. But let's just talk reforms for a second. In all seriousness, the press corps right now, I published an op-ed in The Hill that came out on Wednesday. And I said, hey, screw the New York Times, screw the front row. President Trump and the campaign effectively used independent media, right? Your show, this show, long form, Joe Rogan, you name it, right? They need to rethink how they approach the media at all, like totally, because you don't need CNN and the New York Times.
First of all, we're setting the agenda now. So first, conservatives, I want to stop the whining about the mainstream media anymore. We are the dominant media force, the podcast, the streaming services, the radio shows, the clips, everything, put it up on Twitter, whatever your platform is. So you can tell in this last campaign how we can drive that, what I think the White House ought to do. And so as you remember, my plan in 16, early 17 was to take the White House press corps, which is right on top of the Oval Office.
I know.
I wanted to remove it across Lafayette Square and make them come on every day. But Ryan's being the nice guy, because Ryan's a very kind man. He says, let's put him in the EOB. You got to remember, if you ever go back on YouTube and watch these amazing press conferences of Jack Kennedy, the first two were done at the State Department, but the others were done, I think, over in the auditorium of EOB, which is magnificent. I would put the press conference over there in a bigger theater. I think it seats 250, which Trump, he loves playing to big houses, right? So you put big rooms. So you put that there. And by the way, I think you put all the media over there. You get them out of being right on top of people because they can come up from where the pool used to be, where the Brady and that room. Thing. And for folks on TV, it is 10 times bigger than in real life. It is so tiny down there, right? You're on top of each other. Then I would do something else, like your editorial say. The first three rows should be the podcasts and the streaming services. And we got to find the new Helen Thomas. Is it Joe Rogan show or whatever? That the first questions go to the people that drive the news, right? The people that young people are getting the news by, right? TikTok people, Instagram people, all of it. And as long as they send people that are serious there as White House correspondents, and that all has to be kind of vetted, I'm all for changing it radically. And here's what I think you're going to find. You're going to find such a massive interest by young people of all this news, right? You're going to see it presented in a different way. President Trump's a disruptor, and I think that this is the perfect time to do this.
All right, we talked about personnel. I didn't take college in math, so I'm going to just be straight with you on this. But they have currently a 220 majority House Republicans, right? So he's got Wolf, Stefanik, and Gaetz so far.
220. Well, I think it's going to get to 221, 222.
Okay, so 221, 222.
Gaetz, Stefanik, and Waltz all gone right now.
Okay, so right now, Speaker Johnson, I mean, one person goes in for an operation. There's the majority. How concerned should we be about this?
First off, you got to get. I think Hochul won't do it, but I think that DeSantis can name special elections right away. Those are two safe districts. We ought to get up and go and get those guys in there. Like the special election should be the 21st of January. It should be the day after the inauguration, because you're right. You get a guy. Hey, three of these guys are a little, creaky. They could, they could miss a day or two with illness. So I think it's a big concern.
Okay,
this is why I think. Like even Elise, who I think is fantastic. I'm glad she's going to the UN. I would have probably held off on that one until we got a little into it and maybe named her even later. But hey, it's very thin. It's all
right. President Trump's talked about retribution. He's talked about, and I'm just saying, like the media is all.
You mean justice?
Okay, yeah, fine. But okay, he's talked about bringing, there's been rumors, I should say that, because let's be honest about where the media is, about bringing people like Mark Milley back on active duty, sending him to a court martial, whatever.
Number one thing of that, I think Mark Milley's got to be recalled on the first action of President Trump. I think is so important to reassert civilian control over the Pentagon, the uniformed services. I think Mark Milley has to be recalled to active duty on the afternoon of the 20th. And I think a military tribunal, a court martial, has to be called, right, impaneled, a court martial, and Mark Milley has to be brought up on charges in court martial.
Okay. What about in general, like his tone? Meaning, I think President Trump struck an amazing tone with President Biden when he says, "My retribution is your success." What pisses the left off is when he is right.
Yes.
And I think what silenced so much of the left is when they saw on election night women, people of color, young kids saying, "You know what? This guy gets it done."
Yes. That's all. Look, he's got to focus on the economic and the border. That's what got him here. The economic crisis we have before us because of the debt levels is going to be serious. That should be with the Secretary of Treasury and the economic team, all important. He should focus on that along with the beginning of the mass deportations. That's going to be enormously complicated, as you can imagine. All the other stuff, I think, has to be done with absolute sunlight, 100% transparency. What I would recommend, and I think you've talked to him many times about this, I would start in the afternoon of the 20th with the beginning of a rolling series of the biggest declassifications we've ever had. As you know, Sean, too much stuff is classified, and that's just to kind of keep the powers that be in the powers that be. I think you start with mass, you start with mass declassifications, day after day after day, on all types of topics, and then I think you get in. You let the Attorney General, you let the Inspector Generals, the IGs, the people running intelligence, let those deal with that. Where President Trump should be up every day talking to the people about economics, about his new tax cuts, about his growth policies, about all that, and how humanely we're going to actually reverse the 11 million people that came in under Biden's watch. That's a full-time job. And I think he's upbeat, a new golden age. Mark Andreessen, these guys are talking about Bill Ackman saying you could have 4 or 5% growth just on technology once you take off the restraining regulations. I think we ought to be doing that. President Trump ought to be doing that. And now you've got Gaetz, you've got other people that can carry the ball for you on what has to be total open sunlight investigations.
All right, let me just ask you this. You spent 4 months in prison because a sham committee decided that they had the authority to do something that I think was ridiculous. We now know that Liz Cheney coerced testimony from Cassidy Hutchinson and subverted her own attorney, Stefan Passatino, and then literally lied about him, tarred and feathered that guy. How do you, I look at this and say, how does that, just on a personal level, you look, and do you want retribution? Do you want to, expose these guys?
What I think has to happen is we have to redo a new January 6th committee where they have a ranking member and they have minority counsel. They get all the information, they cross-examine. We have to do it like we've done Watergate and all these other things. You can't do it. You have to have full transparency. We have to go back, and I think the House can do this, to 2020 and to January 6th, all of it, and have to go through fundamentally and make sure the Democrats have a voice in this. Make sure that they can cross-examine.
Okay, but fine. But how do you personally? I'd be pissed. I'm petty and Irish.
I fought this over separation of powers. Look, I knew Nancy Pelosi are lawless. It is what it is. The prison time I had, because the prison, I wasn't in a camp like Michael Cohen or Peter Navarro. I was actually in a federal prison. It was the most empowering thing I've ever done. And the reason was I spent my 20s on a Navy destroyer where you're kind of on top of each other, cheek by jowl. And I spent my 70s in a federal prison where the same thing. It was very empowering for me to know that I could physically go through something that's trying to break you. And I went through, and I actually, I enjoyed the challenge. I actually loved it. The challenge is so extreme because the place is so violent. There's so many drugs, and it's such a controlled environment that for me, and I knew I don't have any vengeance for Nancy Pelosi. What we have to make sure is that this can never happen again. I was the first misdemeanor in Danbury's history. It's been there since 1935. I think I was told I'm the only misdemeanor been in a federal prison, I think, in history. I think they have misdemeanors, even then they go to camps. It's just you don't put people in misdemeanors in prison. So it just we have to make sure that we can't allow the weaponization of government. And that's going to take a while. So I think, and the people rendered a verdict on principally what they thought was happening to Trump, but as a subset to Navarro, myself, as part of that. But I was proud, and I said, if I have to go to prison again for fighting for this, I'll go to prison again. I'm not going to back off, and they can't intimidate me with prison. So people have to realize in our fight, particularly if we lose control again, like we did lose control of the houses of Congress and the executive branch, you should understand that if you're at the tip of the spear of this fight, they're going to target you unless we stop it now. And the way to stop it now is full investigations of the folks that did it.
You're a better man than me. I would be bitter, petty, and seek revenge. But
No,
there you go.
All
right, Steve.
The crazy Irishman that loves the fight.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for this.
Commander, I'm leaving your show with the following. I'm going to now work on, over the weekend, Sean Spicer as Secretary of the Navy Secretary. I think, and seriously, I think he'd be great. You have a great love. You have a great love for the Navy. And right now we need somebody in leadership over there that has a great love for our fleet and our sailors.
Well, I will say this with Waltz and Hegseth, we've already got too much Army, and this is, so. So, all right, Steve, I appreciate you spending time with us.
See you, brother.
Thanks, brother. All right, that was, I think we just made a ton of news with Steve Bannon. I mean, holy smokes, I can go through what we just talked about. The press should be moved across the street. Mark Milley has to be called back to active duty. New FBI director. I mean, my friends, if you need to tell your friends and share this right now, because this is big news that you just witnessed. So let's move on, though. I got to bring in Dr. Peter McCullough and talk about the Maha movement, where it is now and where we're headed. Let's bring in Dr. McCullough. Hey, Dr. McCullough, good to see you. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So we've been talking about wellness, make America healthy again. Trump wins. What are the priorities out of the gate? What do they need to do to implement an agenda that will get America back on the right track, wellness and health-wise?
Just like this approach, make America healthy again, probably gained voters. And RFK joining Trump may have been one of the tipping points for his victory. This kind of new thinking, I think, should be unifying for the country, Sean. Democrats and Republicans should agree on this, that we can all become healthier. There will invariably be a list of priorities that settle through. From my perspective, I think it's time for the COVID-19 vaccines to be taken off the market. People have basically said the COVID crisis is over with. It's no different than a common cold. We don't even test for it anymore in my office. No one's taking the vaccines anyway. So there's no reason for these, the last boosters to stay on the market. That would be Pfizer, Moderna, and Novavax. They're all emergency use authorized. There's no more emergency. So I'd say vaccines off the market. And then many are interested in repealing the 1986 Vaccine Injury Compensation Act, so we won't have any more problems with vaccine safety. The companies would have to stay behind their products. And then after that, there's a great interest in water and food and other ways to generally have the population get healthier.
So I learned a lot, admittedly, in the last 8 months to a year about the power and conflicts of big pharma in Washington, D.C. in our government. Should big pharma be worried about the approach of this administration, or are they that powerful that they kind of laugh at the notion that someone's going to come after them?
There hasn't been any action outside of the 5 states that are suing just Pfizer right now for deceptive trade practices, but they probably should worry if all the other states join in and it's expanded from Pfizer to Moderna, Janssen, and Novavax. And the basis of the suits is that the companies didn't fairly present the risks, including fatal risks of vaccination, along with the theoretical benefits and all the promotional materials. There are no special prosecutors assigned for any other aspects of wrongdoing in the pandemic. None have actually been mentioned yet. The new administration is not yet installed. Big pharma is so big and so powerful that they have so many different ways to strategize and to anticipate. It's going to be a giant chess game, but people are looking for fairness in coming out of this pandemic.
Your group, the wellness group, has sort of really flourished, offering alternatives. And it's interesting. Like I said, I feel like it's kind of, I've learned a lot and had this health awakening, this wellness awakening. You guys, your leadership, your organization, are we about to establish some kind of parallel healthcare universe where you've got groups like yours out there offering one set of things and then traditional healthcare, or will traditional healthcare bend towards you?
No, I think they're going to complement each other. Wellness Company, through its telemedicine and its offering of nutraceutical supplements as well as prescription medicines, takes an approach of a health and wellness non-prescription initial, try at whatever health problem that's encountered. And more people want natural choices as opposed to going strictly to drugs. So it's very attractive. The emergency medical kits are terrific. Now people can just avoid the urgent care and ER through self-management, through a guide, the medications prescribed ahead of time in the kits, and then telemedicine if needed. What we're trying to do at wellness companies, we're trying to empower the patients so they feel like they can control the problem as opposed to being dependent on the doctor, the healthcare system, and drugs.
Yeah, that's what I love about it. You kind of prescribe everything ahead of time. You get this kit at your house, and then you've got the telemedicine option. So I don't have to wait like 3 months to get in to see a primary care physician. I've already got certain things ready to go.
Yeah, certainly for the emergency or urgent things, Sean, but for chronic problems like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, people are getting One Wellness memberships where they pay a monthly fee. They get free medications, they get free supplements through the membership fee that they pay each month. Is very affordable. Once you do a calculation on this, one or two problems, one or two supplements or medicines, it's far more cost effective just to have a One Wellness membership and be covered. And at the highest level, it's free telemedicine anyway. So if you need to talk to the doctor as much as you want to, you've got it.
Okay. Dr. McCullough, thanks for joining us. We'll check back in with you soon because I'm sure we're going to have more developments in the Trump administration that we want to get your take on.
Thank you.
You bet. What a great conversation with Dr. McCullough. Guys, thanks for being with us all week. We got a lot. The ride is going to be going on for a while. We got a ways to go till January 20th. We're going to be your source for everything that breaks down from the new Trump administration. So stick with us, hit subscribe, share this show, sign up for my free newsletter, SeanSpicer.com. And we're going to go on this journey together. It's going to be epic. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.